Thanks for joining us on This Week in Health IT. This is a solution showcase. My name is Bill Russell, former healthcare CIO for a 16-hospital system and the creator of This Week in Health IT, a channel dedicated to keeping health IT staff current and engaged. Today, we talk cloud data management, and we have Bill Gurling, Principal Architect with Rubrik. We have Knapp, System Engineer for New Hanover Regional Medical Center, and Brian Farmintino, System Infrastructure Manager as well. And of course, we have Vik Nagjee, CTO extraordinaire with Sirius Healthcare, to round out the panel. Great discussion. I think you'll enjoy it. Special thanks to our influence show sponsors, Sirius Healthcare and Health Lyrics, for choosing to invest in our mission to develop the next generation of health IT leaders. If you want to be a part of our mission, you can become a show sponsor as well. The first step is to send an email to partner@thisweekinhealthit.com. Somebody sent me a note and said, hey, how can we help out the podcast? There's two great ways you can help out the podcast. One is just shoot a note to a friend and tell them that you're getting a lot of benefit out of the show and that they should really subscribe to it. But another way you can really help us out is by, whatever app you're listening to the podcast on, go ahead and click and give us a review. Tell people about the value that you're getting from the show. We would really appreciate it. It helps us. It moves us up in the rankings in Apple and in Google and in the other services as well. And doesn't take that long, and we really appreciate it. Just a quick note before we get to our show. We launched a new podcast, Today in Health IT. We look at one story every weekday morning, and we break it down from a health IT perspective. You can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts at Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Overcast, you name it, we're out there. You can also go to todayinhealthit.com. And now on to today's show. All right, today we're going to talk about building an effective cloud data management strategy. And we have a great group of guests with us today. We have Bill Gurling, who's the principal architect with Rubrik. We have Knapp, system engineer at New Hanover Regional Medical Center. Brian Farmintino, system infrastructure manager for New Hanover Regional Medical Center. And you guys will tell us about New Hanover in a minute. And then Vik Nagjee, who's been on the show a couple times, healthcare managed services with Sirius, and all around CTO and smart guy. So we love having Vik on the show. We'll start with you, Brian. Tell us about New Hanover Regional Medical Center.
Great, and thanks for having us, Bill. So the New Hanover Regional Medical Center, we're located primary hospital in Wilmington, North Carolina. And we've been a not-for-profit community hospital serving the Southeast since November 1967, which is actually my birth month. We have close to 8,000 team members currently supporting multiple hospitals, many medical practices throughout the area. We continue to rank in the top quadrant of various surveys that include not just the great patient care we provide to the community, but also one of the best places to work. That was, and it is true. It's a great place to work, great leadership, great employees, everyone dedicated, to making it the best experience for a patient, that we can. Recently, and on February 1st, New Hanover Regional Medical Center, we joined forces with and became a division of Novant Health. And this will allow us to expand, all of the great healthcare we currently provide to the area, but we'll be able to expand that, up and down the East Coast. We're really looking forward to, the journey with Novant Health. We're very similar in the way we approach taking care of our patients, our teams, our employees. So overall, we're really excited to see where that goes with Novant. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to Wilmington is a place I used to drive through on my way to Myrtle Beach. It's
yes.
But we did hang out there. My dad was on a destroyer when he was in the Navy, and I guess is the battleship North Carolina still there?
Yep. USS North Carolina. Yep, it's on the Cape Fear River, just 10 minutes from our hospital.
Yeah, and I remember my dad took us up there when we were little kids, and he walked us around and said, and I remember they took us into the quarters where they slept, and I'm like,
yes.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you. First of all, it's not that big of a ship anymore. You look at those ships going out into the ocean, you're like, oh my gosh, that went out into the ocean, and the quarters are really small.
Yeah, when you get to do that tour on that ship, the biggest accomplishment is getting through it without having a bump on the head or falling down a step. It's very tight quarters.
Yeah, so I also remember all the alligators around the
Yes.
around the base as well as a little kid. That's what I remember. Well,
Yep.
Novant Health, congratulations on that. That's a
Thank you.
great organization, and I think that's a great partnership for you guys. Brian, we chatted a little bit before we got on the show about your cloud journey. Tell us about the New Hanover's cloud journey to date. What have you guys done, and where are you going?
Sure. So we initially started our cloud journey probably back in late 2017, maybe early 2018. Was really attracted to us. We were attracted to it, but really hadn't had a lot of experience with it. So originally we decided to just jump right in, right into the 10 feet and see where that went. Shortly after that, we realized that, this is new to us and we really need to partner with a vendor to help us at least guide us through the basic foundation and the processes that just we weren't familiar with in HRMC. So one of the first things we did was we developed a cloud first strategy, that was really approved by our executive team and communicated throughout the organization as a way forward for the organization. Our cloud first strategic benefits, they really allow us to increase our ability to serve bursts in demand, which are becoming more and more popular, and even those that exceed, the provision capacity. Really scalable, easy to adjust, as those things pop up. Another key driver for us is really to shift some of our IT personnel away from managing data centers and the day-to-day stuff, from the past, and being able to develop and concentrate on new higher value tasks for the organization as healthcare shifts. It's shifting every day.
Yep.
So
Brian, you're in a hurricane center. So where is your cloud? Where did you choose to house your?
Yeah, we are definitely Hurricane Alley, or we're close to that. Every couple years, we usually get a storm. So we decided to go with Amazon, to start, and mainly, and I was actually going to get to that as I move forward here. Really, what drove us to Amazon was we were working on an Alexa project with some of our team, and that's really attracted us to Amazon. So since then, we've been able to install significant amount of Alexa devices in patient rooms. And this has been a huge success for not only patient experience, but for our patient families as well. So that was really the kickstart, into this, on top of all the, reducing our data center, getting our IT staff thinking in a different way, as we move forward, as healthcare is changing, technology is changing. So that was really our start, of our journey into the public cloud. So we continue to move environments into AWS as we're getting more acclimated and comfortable with cloud computing, and have already seen the agility and scaling opportunities prove itself to us. We saw that just a couple of weeks ago with a critical system we put in that was, it, at the initial start of it was a little more financially than we expected, but immediate scaling and looking at all the opportunities that cloud offers, we were able to drop those costs significantly right away. So that was a great proven point to us that, it not only do we read it, we just experienced it, moving forward. So we're definitely looking forward to increasing our cloud footprint, with us now being able to offer VDI capability to some of our teams using AWS Workspace. So we are in somewhat the beginning stage of that. We've done a POC with some of our team members, and it's been pretty successful. We've had a few bumps along the road, but that's to be expected with all the different applications, that we have, and getting all those to work. So we're looking forward to the future in that workspace. And finally, like cloud computing, our teams are becoming more agile and developing skills they probably never thought, they would have had a couple years ago, and being able to apply, those into the ever-changing world, of IT and healthcare. We get both sides of it.
Yeah, you really hit on the three main things that people talk about when they go to the cloud, and we heard this really in spades throughout the pandemic. One is agility, we can go in a lot of different directions. The second is access to new sets of tools, like you talked about with AWS and really tapping into Alexa, and they have AI tools and those kind of things, as does Azure, as does Google's cloud and others.
Correct.
And then the third really being redirecting your staff to higher level items instead of moving a server from one rack to another. They're now logically moving stuff around and really elevating their skill set. So you really hit on the big three that we hear quite often.
Yeah, Bill, and like everyone else, we have no doubt that we are going to be a multi-cloud environment. There's just going to be, there's things that Amazon will do better. There's things that Azure will do better, or may be required by us, one of our applications. Same with Google. And we're reading more and more about the opportunities that Google has. So we have no doubt that we're going to be a multi-cloud, environment moving forward. I just wanted to get our hands on basic cloud computing with Amazon first. And, once, like anything else, you get the foundation done, you move forward, and, you apply a lot of the same concepts, whether it's Azure, AWS, Google, or whatever.
Yeah, and this is where it gets interesting. Vik, I want to come over because you and I have had cloud conversations back when you were interim CTO over at Cleveland Clinic and other places. We talked about, the need to get to cloud for agility and those kind of things. We also talked about some of the challenges. But, what kind of specific challenges do companies face when examining really their data management strategy, especially across a multi-cloud environment?
Yeah, thanks for that, Bill. I'm going to start with my usual, how long is a piece of string, as to how long you want to take to talk through this. But essentially, I think it all comes back to just the nature of the applications that healthcare organizations deal with, right? Some of them have specific regulations. They're either FDA regulated. Some of them are based on more, let's call them foundational platforms that are not very modern. And it's the biggest, I guess, the biggest aspect is the fact that the data is so spread out and in pockets, right, within healthcare organizations. Because once again, interoperability is a bad word. So things are kind of like in their own things, and they're kind of spread out all over the place, right? So when you start talking about data management, I think the first thing that comes up now is creating a data governance strategy, right? It's like, how do you actually take and put together a program around your data? How do you classify it? How do you access it, et cetera, et cetera? And in parallel, you have this whole data management and data protection strategy, with the focus and goal being not only do you actually safely back up your data, which is very important to do, but you have the ability to be able to actually restore it in a timely fashion so that it's useful and available to you and your applications when you need it, right? To your users when you need it. So how can we take this fragmented system that we have today and sort of learn from the cloud first approaches and the cloud platforms that exist that were born in the cloud era, right? That talk about the fluid motion of data, that have access to these sorts of different techniques and capabilities, automation, orchestration. So the trick really is how do you bring some of those things back into an on-premises enterprise type environment? So that's kind of like the biggest challenge, I think.
Yeah, and this is where Rubrik comes in. And I love talking about this because we talk about a cloud first strategy, but there are companies that were built from the cloud. So Rubrik is a cloud data management company, but it was built from the cloud first. So Bill, talk to us a little bit about what makes Rubrik different in their approach in what they bring to healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say first and foremost, the point that you just made is particularly relevant. That's being born in this era and sort of having architected for these consumption models and these patterns. Our philosophy is one of security and resiliency at the point of data right now. So that I think that philosophical difference is a big thing that brings a lot of value to our customers. When we interact and protect data, or interact with and protect data sets that are in the data center, we're doing so with sort of like best of breed integrations with those data center technologies. But when we interact with and protect data sets in a cloud platform, we're doing so in a very different manner, right? We're using API driven integrations as opposed to being in the data path, things of that nature. And so this idea of sort of security, data protection, resiliency at the point of data, using whatever methodology is most logical for that implementation, is something that's like a key foundational piece of our design philosophy. And our customers really, really seem to appreciate it because it lets you operate in these hybrid and multi-cloud environments using sort of a best fit approach for whatever platform you're interacting with. On top of that, I would say just trying to build out more data services out on top of operational backup and recovery, and continuing to kind of like bring additional value to these solutions. So things like detecting ransomware and offering rapid rollback, detecting where the data sets live in your data protection assets and alerting the customer if some piece of PII spills over some undesirable boundary, orchestrating recovery across accounts or across regions or even across hybrid and multi-cloud architectures. Those types of things are things that we sort of built our product to do from day one. We built it into the DNA of our software. And now that our customers are really beginning to adopt these sort of multi-cloud hybrid cloud architectures, it's just paying dividends.
So it's a fabric that sits above all of that, right? So it's a fabric that sits. You can be a multi-cloud environment, multiple data centers, multiple environments, and you can essentially apply those same kind of data tiering, data security models and frameworks across all of it, no matter where it resides.
That's exactly right. So we've got a control plane that actually lives in SaaS, and you can link that control plane to things that SaaS would naturally interact with. So cloud native workloads is a great example there. When we protect workloads in AWS or Azure or GCE, it's an API driven integration from our SaaS control plane to the APIs of the cloud platforms. But then if we protect a data center workload, it's more logical for us to co-locate some sort of appliance with a lot of these things, integrate that appliance natively with, say, the APIs of the storage on premises or the APIs of the virtualization platform on premises. And then we hook that up to the SaaS control plane that natively protects things like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service in the cloud. And that is sort of your single set of APIs and your single user interface for interacting with this whole suite of capabilities.
So data management, so it's not a security platform, but has security built in. And it's not a DR platform, but it has elements of DR built into it. It's not an automation platform, but since it's built on APIs, there's a significant amount of automation that goes on across it as well. I mean, so it's the classification data management platform, but you provide services across all those other things that I just rattled off.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah. We're trying to essentially take this asset, right, that was data protection, that was operational backup and recovery, that was a must-have, and in the age of ransomware is even doubly so. And we're trying to just produce additional value drivers out of this object or this capability that our customers sort of felt like they had to have. And now it's something like, oh my gosh, I can actually extract business value out of this, right? I can automate this for test dev, or I can orchestrate ransomware recovery using this really rapidly. And all of a sudden it goes from a sunk cost to a value driver. And that's really what we're trying to do as a company is take this idea of data protection, expand it across all of these boundaries, and turn it into a value driver instead of a cost center.
Yeah, Chris, I'm going to get to you in a second because I want to hear how this got implemented at New Hanover's data center across your multi-cloud environment. But Bill, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about ransomware. I just read this article and it was the scariest thing. As a former healthcare CIO, it was the scariest thing I've read. And it was really about one of the health systems that got attacked and lost everything, lost all their images for years. Like there's no way to get them back, kind of thing. And that is one of those things that scares the living daylights out of executives at this point. Of you can't negotiate, you can't pay for to get the keys to unlock that information. Therefore, you're sort of at the whim of what happens to you once they are in and doing those things. What protects a Rubrik from that kind of attack? What kind of architecture have you guys implemented that would either alert or protect against ransomware attack?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Thank you. So I would say number one, I hate to sort of beat the drum, but this idea of security at the point of data is really the big driver for our value relative to that use case. So oftentimes these, images are in storage systems that are on premises. When we're protecting this stuff, we're typically ingesting it into our product, storing snapshots for some duration of time, sticking a copy in the cloud somewhere, right? And then in a scenario like this, the desire is to sort of recover en masse as rapidly as possible to the last known good point in time. And so our product is engineered in such a way that the actual file system on the ingest point, first and foremost, is built with being immutable in mind, like all the way down to the lowest primitive. And I don't want to belabor the point too much, but like this extends all the way down into the file system layer, where literally the file system APIs will not accept override operations, even from our own software. And then it sort of climbs up the stack there. So those APIs are authenticated, right? And they're built specifically to talk to our data management applications. There's CRCs built in all the way up and down the stack. So this is sort of the product that goes in the data center, sort of a clustered scale out architecture. And so that file system all the way down to like the chunk level, all the way up to the stripe and object level, has CRCs built all the way up and down the stack. And so we do like rolling scrubs on the data set itself to ensure it hasn't changed since ingest. And then we do scrubs as the data is reassembled and presented to the data management application for recovery to ensure that the actual data being returned to the end user is in a known good state from its last known snapshot that you're trying to recover from. And so that's sort of just the fundamental, like, we know the data is good attributes of the file system itself, but that's kind of tactical. I think the more strategic thing that we do is the idea of using the metadata from our snapshots and from the file systems and virtual machines and databases and cloud instances that we're protecting, and keeping track of known good patterns in that data set, and then alerting the end user if we see an anomalous pattern, right? So this could be sweeping ACL changes, file extension changes, the actual contents of the files themselves changing, just as examples. And the people that write this are way smarter than me. The engineers can tell you all the models that they're using and how they've trained it and whatnot. But the net of it is that we can detect anomalous behavior. And when we think we see ransomware, we alert the end user, and then we essentially provide, through our SaaS control plane, the ability to identify the blast radius, so what's been affected, and the ability to identify last known good point in time. And then we hand them a workflow where they can begin rolling back or recovering maybe into an account where they might conduct some sort of forensic activity or what have you, whatever that sort of their run book and their use case dictates at that point. So I would say security at the point of data, knowing that the data is good, protecting the data from malicious activity, like all the way down to a fundamental level, is point number one. And then intelligence on top of operational backup and recovery, so that data set is like immediately at your fingertips during an event, would be the second biggest point that I would present.
I think it's interesting you use the word blast radius. We've been talking about the fact that, cybersecurity has become a cyber war, and we're now starting to use that kind of terminology, war, blast radius and those kind of things of what are we protecting? How do we protect them? We're talking about offensive and defensive strategies. It's really interesting. Chris, I wanted to come to you. This, I'm thinking back of, 2011, 2012, we were doing things like, tiering of our data. We were doing pretty traditional backups. We were doing, pretty traditional things across, SANs and whatnot in our data centers. This represents a pretty significant shift. Give us an idea of, from what were some of the things you had to do with your staff to bring them up to speed? What's it like working with this tool? And, what are the kind of things that you guys can do today that potentially you couldn't do, 6 or 7 years ago?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having us on. When we first started looking for a new backup solution, we wanted something that was easy to use. And we also wanted something that would help us to kind of start the organization's cloud journey, that we'd be able to leverage some cloud functionality to help maybe offload some workloads or some storage issues or anything like that we've probably experienced in the past.
So, how long from the time you decided to go down this path till the time you actually got it up and running? How long of a time period was that?
Well, we did it. We had a pretty lengthy POC with Rubrik just to validate the functionality of everything. But we've got, being a healthcare organization, we've got some older systems, some older, AAX systems for our EHR and our ERP systems. So we needed to take our time and make sure that Rubrik would work for those, because those are a little bit older. And it did. But after we completed our POC and we received our own hardware, we were racked, stacked, and backing up in 4 hours. It was that easy to get it installed, get it configured, and create our first SLA policy to start backing up and protecting our data.
Wow. So the transition from the older tools that you used to the Rubrik environment was not a major, like you had to send people out for training and that kind of stuff. They were able to pick it up pretty quickly.
Oh, definitely. That was probably one of the major pieces that we were looking at for a new backup system was just ease of use. Because, backups are kind of boring. It's not the fun piece of job. But with the Rubrik interface, there's only a few of us that have to work with the backups, but the other guys, they picked up on it fairly easy and have been able to kind of run with it without any kind of formal training.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys you guys are just scratching the surface of what you can do with Rubrik. It's going to be interesting, to talk to you, a year or two down the road and see what you're able to do. Vik, I wanted to come back to you. You've run large managed service programs, including managed services around EHR and EHR managed hosting. How does a cloud-based solution like Rubrik work in that environment?
Very well. Next question. I'm just kidding.
No, but seriously,
No,
you've run Epic managed service hosting. You've done a lot of EHR service hosting. Are you saying it just snaps in there and works well?
Yeah, I think, there's a couple different things, right? So first of all, fundamentally, and Chris mentioned this too, right? Fundamentally, it has to be able to protect the data across the systems that you have. Because if it doesn't and there are gaps, then you're like, now I need something else to fill those gaps. And then you start running into a tricky situation because you have multiple points where you're trying to protect your data, right? So first of all, it's got to check all those boxes. And then you start looking a little bit under the covers. So as it started out as a pure data protection play, as Bill really well articulated, kind of all of the other goodness that you get from the platform, you start looking at how you can apply or take advantage of some of those goodness type things in your environment. So as a service provider, restoration, so protection of data is absolutely paramount, right? Because you're writing SLAs, which you're obligated to folks to protect their environments and uptime and protect against ransomware and all those sorts of things, right? So protecting the data is great. Recoverability is super important because you have to be able to recover it in the event something bad happens, malicious or not, right? So recoverability becomes very important. Then you start thinking about things like, okay, how do I actually build in some automation and orchestration into my entire workflow? Because the thing that kills a service provider is there's two things, right? So one is inefficient processes that require a lot of manual intervention, and the second are one-offs. So you want standardization across the board as much as possible so that you can then scale. So you want to create these automation and orchestration planes and platforms as well as you can across the entire spectrum. So when you have a platform that was built for that was built for the cloud, now you're sort of almost playing catch up in an on-premises model, right? It's like, okay, what are some of the features that we can take advantage of that this platform offers that we may not already have in our regular day-to-day operations? And so we started building out a lot of automation based on this platform, a lot of orchestration based on this platform, a lot of automated tests to validate the integrity of the data, because it's not just good enough to back it up. And yes, the data protection platform does a lot of CRCs, a lot of checking, but at the end of the day, it's the application that needs to be able to read the data. So you're going to, have automated restoration into the application in a sandbox environment, run your integrity checks and validate it, and so on. And then coming back a little bit even further is like, okay, the base protection for things like EHR systems based on modern storage platforms are snapshots, right? So how do you actually protect these snapshots? How do you actually recover from these snapshots as quickly as possible in the event that you actually have a problem in your production side or your primary storage array? And then how do you actually protect those snapshots? So that was also another very important thing that we had to look at as we were building out, the service provider model. Say, can we actually tie into the storage platform? Because the storage platforms have capabilities to be able to do diffs between snapshots. And so if the data protection platform can tie into that, that's just like super goodness, right? So those are some of the pillars that we built on. And then look, fundamentally, it's all about COGS, right? You have to optimize your COGS as a service provider. You have to be able to do things better, cheaper, faster, stronger, so that you can actually scale and you're competitive, right? So when you actually start looking at the price or the cost per front end terabyte protected, which is typically what you look at when you're looking at a data protection platform, regardless of all the bells and whistles and features that we just talked about, you have to be competitive. And this checks the box as well. So it's not like you get all these things and now you're paying an arm and a leg for it. No, it's not. It's like all of this goodness that's packed into this platform, and you're able to be competitive on the pricing front too.
You know what struck me about that, Vik, is we're talking to New Hanover Regional Medical Center, which is not a massive health system, but what you're describing is managing terabytes and terabytes of data across multiple health systems and multiple EHRs and those kind of things. So, I mean, this is a platform that scales up because it was built and designed from the cloud. It scales up very, very well from small to extremely large.
Exactly right. And again, it's a platform that gives you the ability to, just like you said, to scale up or down as you need, and wide or narrow as you need. And fundamentally, the thing that they did, that Rubrik did right from day one, is that they're a software company. Everything that they built is all software, 110% software. Yes, there are appliances that you can buy that that are optimized, et cetera, but it's all software. And it's just, when you take that and you apply it to your environment, regardless of the size of your environment, regardless of the complexity, look, if they're able to protect your data 100% inside of your data center when you're in healthcare, that's huge. There's a lot of competitors that play in the similar spaces for data protection that have come about since Rubrik has been around, or a little bit after, or some even before, that still aren't able to protect data across the wide variety of esoteric operating systems and storage platforms that healthcare providers have. So when you check all of those boxes, that's pretty dang impressive.
Yeah, I want to go down this, Bill. I'm going to ask you about automation, because it sounds to me like this is one of the areas where this really distances itself from the pack and really provides. I'm talking to a lot of CIOs at this point that are looking at, robotic process automation and all sorts of automation to the daily operation of the data center. And some of that's cost cutting, but some of that's just efficiency. It's just trying to make the organization as efficient as possible. So talk to us about the automation that's available on the Rubrik platform, and what are people using it for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would carve automation up into a couple of camps. Number one, automated things that Rubrik just does because it's part of our user experience and our approach to data protection. And then number two, hooks or integrations that customers can use to extend and integrate Rubrik, to kind of deeper into their environment and processes. And so the first thing that I would say is, like, automation is something that's a key component of what we do. If you look at the way, even the most fundamental thing that we did in V1 of our product, protecting VMware VMs, right? We automated the discovery process. We automated the jobs through our SLA engine, where you just define sort of this declarative policy and assign it to things. We schedule all the jobs, we handle all the retry logic, all that stuff. We automate transferring that data set from our storage on the cluster that's protecting those vSphere VMs, and we automated putting that into AWS, into S3 in an incremental manner, ensuring it was encrypted, ensuring it was indexed. And then we automated the whole recovery process end to end if you wanted to recover a file or a virtual machine out of that archive. So that's like V1 of our product when we first came out of stealth. And those patterns are just sprayed all over what we do today. So if you protect databases, automated discovery, live mounts, instant recovery, fully automated, tiering to the cloud, so on and so forth. And the cloud workloads are the same. You add 100 AWS accounts to our cloud platform. You want to protect instances across all of them. You can create 10 policies and 10 tag rules, and we'll automate assigning those policies out across that whole estate. And we'll automate all the data protection that comes along with it. And then the ransomware workflows, the data governance workflows, things that we're building right now that are going to come out soon, all predicated largely on automation, orchestration, and knowledge of metadata. So that's sort of number one that I'll talk about is Brian mentioned that he's going to be multi-cloud. He wants to, people to focus on higher value tasks. Obviously, you got to get the foundation done building your cloud estate. And part of getting the foundation done building your cloud estate is using tooling that gives you the governance models that you want across these hybrid and multi-cloud boundaries. So a big part of that is not only a tool that supports all of those things, but doing CloudWrite also entails a ton of automation orchestration, right? Like elasticity is what gets you cost efficiencies and resiliency in the cloud, and automation is what gets you elasticity. And so what we've done on top of just automating things like in the bowels of our product, for lack of a better description, is we've also just built APIs on top of both the SaaS control plane and on top of the product that is co-located with data center workloads. And then we've exposed those through easy to use, documentation, API playgrounds, so on and so forth. But then even on top of that, we've built out SDKs and common scripting languages that abstract away some of the nuances of the API and just let you build workflows, right? So think like Python, Go, PowerShell's number one for the data center workloads and the vSphere folks. They love the PowerShell SDK. And then on top of those SDKs, we've built an ecosystem of integration. So if you go to build.rubrik.com, so Bravo, Uniform, India, Lima, Delta, you'll see a bunch of repositories there with things like integrations with ServiceNow or integrations with configuration management tools like Puppet or Chef or Sumo Logic and Splunk or CloudFormation, Terraform, so on and so forth. And so I would say automation is not only in our DNA, but it's on our skin as well. And our customers can basically enter at whatever level of the stack they want. You want to write straight to the API bindings and create your own workflow end to end, have at it. You want to grab something that's just built for the VRA portal, so you can stick us in your service portal and just use what we've built or what the community's built, have at it. And so it's a big part of what we do. It's a big part of our philosophy.
So at its basic, I'm gonna this is me just trying to make it simple. I can find it. I can listen for an event. Once that event happens, I can link into ServiceNow and create a ticket. Essentially, I mean that's a simple workflow, and that's something that you guys enable.
That's correct. Yeah, it's not even like it's a true integration that's sort of in their catalogs and the like as well. It's just a module. I'm not a ServiceNow expert, but it's essentially just a module that you install into the ServiceNow platform, and it provides linkages so that you can see attributes of what we're doing in the ServiceNow system, and so that you can react to events and anomalies on our platform. But it
can get a lot more sophisticated. I mean, you can detect an event and essentially spin up additional AWS processes and services and start moving data and do those kinds of things. It can get very sophisticated very quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Easily accessible, hard to master at the highest level type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yes, I spent the whole morning programming. I know exactly what you mean. It gets, after a while, you just have to walk away from the computer and go, I got to look at the logic diagram again. What was I trying to do? But no, I get it and I understand. So it's very sophisticated. But it's also very approachable is the word I would say. It's as simple as tapping into things, looking for events, and creating processes out of those events. And so it's pretty easy to do. Let's see. Brian, I want to come back to you because I want to hear where you guys are going to go. Where's your cloud journey take you next, and where do you see taking this platform next at your health system?
Well, obviously, our cloud journey continues. We're looking at just, increasing our footprint out there, as upgrades become available for our applications or net new systems that come in based on our cloud first strategy. That's how we're looking at new systems or applications coming in. One of our checklist items is it cloud capable? If so, how do we get there? How do we build? So, we're constantly going through that with our scoping teams.
Will that be a limiting factor if somebody comes in and says, look, we don't run in the cloud yet, we only run in your data center? Will you guys say, all right, we're going to look at some other options?
Yeah, that's been a popular question, with our director and other folks. We're not pushing that right now, but we are educating our teams. And I think a lot of our teams, clinical, business, what have you, they're understanding this is, really where it's going, and this is where we're going as an organization. So we have what you call application owners that really own the application and support it, patch it, whatever that may be. And they're getting very matured on, that's where we're going as an organization. So they're on top of that, of saying, whether they're evaluating an application. I don't know if it's a showstopper for an application coming in, depending on what it gives the organization, what's the ROI on it. But as far as we're seeing today, most applications have either some kind of SaaS option or, infrastructure as a service, either or, and those fit right into our strategy. We're not really seeing anything that says it has to be on premise, especially net new. Now, we do have some older, like most healthcare systems, we have some old systems that play a critical role in patient care, and it is what it is. It's got to stay where it is, whether it's for latency or whatever it is, their code just isn't up to where, we want it to be. It's got to stay on premise. So, but
Yeah.
those are becoming fewer and far between, to be honest.
Yeah, I just interviewed a CIO for a major health system, and we were talking about PBX systems. And, I told them my story of we had a 25-year-old PBX that was made by Nortel, and Nortel doesn't exist anymore. We were getting parts off of eBay. And that's just the nature of, it was a very reliable system. We just never got around to fixing it because it just kept working day in and day out. And the cost of replacement was too high. But that's indicative across healthcare. We do have a lot of legacy gear because of the very specific nature of the work that we do in healthcare. So it's some of that equipment just it doesn't have a path offsite yet. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, and sometimes with some folks, it's if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's working fine. That used to work, but in today's industry and the way things are going, that will leave you behind. If you're not being forward thinking on a new way of doing something, even if the old way is working.
Brian, as a former CIO for a 16 hospital system, it would have been easier for me to get the money after that PBX broke than to ask for the money ahead of time. Yeah. I don't know what it is. It's just the nature of the budgeting process. So, all right. So gentlemen, one of the things I've been doing lately is just throwing out this question at the end, which is, what question didn't I ask? What topic didn't I cover with regard to this that maybe I should have? And if nobody has anything, I'll close it up. But, I may not have captured everything, so I'll just throw it out there.
I think one thing, for your audience is, you have the Rubrik is very flexible, like Bill alluded to, with how you want to configure your environment. Do you want appliances? Do you want 4 appliances? Do you want something in DR? So for us, we currently have several appliances spanned between on-premise in our DR location in Charlotte, North Carolina. And that was really from what we had in place, to eliminate some of the complexity of bringing a new system in. Obviously, as we're moving forward with cloud,
our plan is to eliminate that DR appliance requirement and shifting synchronization and replication out to Amazon. And we're actually already doing that in conjunction with having the appliance DR. So,
that's an interesting point. Bill, I want to go to you with this because this is happening a lot in healthcare. So, New Hanover is now partnering with Novant. How does a tool like this play with regard to mergers and partnerships and organizations coming together?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we play quite nicely because of the affirmation automation stuff, first and foremost, right? So oftentimes the big hang up there is the way business is done in the other organization as opposed to business being done in this organization. And can we get the KPIs that we need? Can we get the telemetry that we need? Can we operationalize it without having to, as Vik said earlier, have one-offs or unicorns in these large environments? And so our ability to kind of shim into whatever your workflow is through automation is something that's exceedingly useful, because whether it's provisioning, day-to-day management, or operational stuff, monitoring, reporting, alerting, so on and so forth, we're pretty friendly. We'll bind with anything as long as you can either make an outbound REST call, scrape a file from somewhere, or take an input from some other system. And then I would say, with regards to the cloud initiatives, like we see ourselves as a bridge to cloud, and almost every one of these environments is looking in some way, shape, or form to do more with cloud. So whether you're on the new side of cloud, where maybe you just want to protect some data center workloads and archive those to object storage in the cloud, whether you're getting a little bit more mature and you want to maybe lift and shift some stuff into the cloud and begin experimenting, or whether you're fairly mature and you're looking for things like hybrid cloud or multi-cloud data protection, we've got value to bring, and we've got a story. So the whole idea, just being flexible and multifaceted and really trying to do one thing well, which is tie data sets together and provide insights. I think it goes over really, really well during M&A type scenarios.
Well, that is a great place to close out our conversation. Gentlemen, I really appreciate your time and really want to thank you for this discussion. I think it's so important for health systems to get this right. The cloud data management strategy, as we move into the cloud, as we move into multi-cloud, is going to be top of mind and something you want to get right. Obviously, you don't want to move into the Hotel California of cloud and not be able to get in and out. And this is the kind of platform that gives you the ability to switch workloads across clouds and those kind of things. So again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. Great speaking with you.
Yep.
What a great discussion. If you know of someone that might benefit from our channel, from these kinds of discussions, please forward them a note. Perhaps your team, your staff. I know if I were a CIO today, I would have every one of my team members listening to this show. It's conference level value every week. They can subscribe on our website, thisweekhealth.com, or they can go wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Google, Overcast, which is what I use, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it, we're out there. They can find us. Go ahead, subscribe today, send a note to someone, and have them subscribe as well. We want to thank our channel sponsors who are investing in our mission to develop the next generation of health IT leaders. Those are VMware, Hillrom, Starbridge Advisors, Aruba, and McAfee. Thanks for listening. That's all for now.